Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andreas Altmann. I'm rector of MCI, the Entrepreneurial School in Innsbruck, Austria. Let me warmly welcome you to this joint distinguished guest event. And the event is on the topic of Europe and the United States global partnership, shared values. The event is done together with the Institute of European Studies and the Haas Business School at Berkeley, both at UC Berkeley. Welcome to all students, faculty, alumni, stakeholders, partners, and guests of both institutions. A very warm welcome goes to our distinguished guest of today. Let us jointly express the gratitude to him that he shares his time and his expertise with us. Let me welcome the first Vice President of the European Parliament, Mr. Othmar. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. So,
I'll hand over to Sharon. Excuse me.
Thank you. Honorable Rector Altmann, dear Andreas, Honorable Director De Wolf, Honorable President Petric, and especially dear students. As the first Vice President of the European Parliament, I am happy to contribute to your debate on this extremely timely and important topic. The transatlantic partnership is always of key importance. And in light of Russia's war against Ukraine and the current geopolitical developments, it is even more crucial. Both the United States and the European Union are in crisis mode. We are experiencing more global challenges at the same time than ever since 1945. The war on Europe's soul, foreign interference and disinformation, digitization, protectionism, the pandemic, the cost of living, energy and climate crisis, asylum and migration, competitive issues, all of these challenges have something in common. They are complex. They know no borders. They deserve no simple answers, and they cannot be managed alone. For finding common solutions, global cooperation and multilateralism are and remain essential on the basis of liberal democracy and our common values across borders and ideologies. This ranges from trade agreements, the fight against climate change, to the unwavering support of Ukraine and the unprecedented sanctions against Russia. It is totally clear, in our globalized world, our partners' weaknesses are our own weaknesses. So we must move beyond the illusion that international politics is a zero-sum game. We must invest in win-win solutions to the benefit of all citizens. Above all, this requires political will, responsibility, courage and honesty. Concerning our transatlantic partnership, I would like to make 3 points. First, on the political situation. While the result of the recent US midterm elections was a narrow victory for liberal democracy, it does not mean that there is time to rest. On the contrary, on both sides of the Atlantic, there is the rise of extremes and political actors who put polarization, populism, and confrontation before the search for common solutions. There must be a wake-up call. We have to stand up for democracy. We have to constantly fight for what is necessary and right. We have to make all the propaganda lies subject to a public fact check. And we have to be realistic. Biden could be the last US president that will stand up for European interests in this way, to support the transatlantic dialogue. We cannot always count on the United States. Therefore, the EU must become more able to act, independent and competitive. For this task, we have developed a term, open strategic autonomy. This means openness wherever possible and independence wherever necessary in strategic policy areas. For example, we are confronted with the Inflation Reduction Act of the US and the 5-year plan of China. This huge subsidy measures require a bold European response. Therefore, on the basis of our eco-social market economy, the single market and the Green Deal, we are working on an EU strategy to boost industrial competitiveness, innovation, trade, investments, and quality jobs. Also in the area of energy policy, semiconductors, and critical raw materials, Europe is strongly exposed to vulnerable global supply chains and must reduce dependencies. Lastly, third, on security and defense. When it comes to NATO, the US and the UK are by far the largest financial contributors. While the EU is the largest defense spender in the world, it is confronted with an ineffective and inefficient patchwork of fragmented national regulation. We have 27 armies and 19 different tank systems. The Russian army consumes as much ammunition in a day as the European defense industry produces in a month. At the same time, the research service of the European Parliament estimates less duplication in EU security and defense policy could lead to an efficiency gain of 22 billion euros per year. Therefore, we urgently need a debate about our security policy. I strongly support an EU defense union, where the national armies are well equipped through common procurement and work together efficiently. I am pleased that all EU member states, including Austria, have adopted the so-called strategic compass. The goal is clear: strengthening the EU's security and defense policy with clear milestones until 2030. It is about increasing synergies and the ability to act. This plan does not contradict, but complements NATO and our transatlantic cooperation. And we have to urgently implement and communicate it. At the same time, we must be able to take decisions faster. The possibility of national vetoes, the undemocratic anonymity principle, must be replaced by democratic majority voting. Otherwise, we risk being crushed between the US, Russia, China, and India. In this spirit, thank you for your attention. I look forward to an interesting discussion. Good luck.
Thank you so much, Vice President Karas. We're honored to have you today here at the Institute of European Studies at UC Berkeley. Allow me to also explain that under the umbrella of our institute, we're proud to have an Austrian studies program, which we organize in partnership with the Austrian Marshall Foundation, that is represented here by its president, Ambassador Wolfgang Petrich, who has agreed to take part in the conversation. Allow me to just say a few words on Wolfgang Petritsch, who is the EU's special envoy to Kosovo, the EU chief negotiator at the Kosovo peace talks, and then high representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Currently, he's not only the president of the Austrian Marshall Plan Foundation, but also serves as the chair of the Herbert Kellman Institute for Interactive Conflict Resolution. Now, before I give the floor to Ambassador Petritsch to start the conversation, allow me to briefly circle back to Andreas for a couple of practical matters. Andreas.
Yes, the practical matters are that you all listening in the digital audience room, you're all welcome to bring in questions if you like. I think there's an insert already on your screen indicating where you can send the questions to if you have any. And the questions will come in on my email account. And so I will be happy, pleased to bring them in wherever I can and wherever they fit. So send, please, your questions, if you have any, to livetalk@mci.edu. I'll repeat it again, livetalk@mci.edu. And then we'll, together, the three of us, Dr. Petritsch, Sharon de Wolf, and me, we will try to go through this Q&A session, including the questions from the digital audience. Now, let me hand back the word. I think it's now on Wolfgang Petritsch, right?
Thank you very much, Professor Altmann, also Jeroen. Always good to see you and talk to you. And of course, I feel particularly privileged to see my dear friend Othmar Karas, who has just spoken to us here for this discussion, which is in front of us. Now, we at the Marshall Plan Foundation, of course, particularly glad that we can contribute and be part of today's conference here. We've done this in the past in different ways and means. We have a very close relationship with Berkeley, with Jeroen Wolf, with this European and Austrian studies program. I think this is indeed a very important issue. How can we at the Marshall Plan Foundation, and then in general and in extension, so to speak, in Austria and in the European Union, approach this, what German Chancellor Scholz has called the Zeitenwende, a turning point. This is a turning point for Europe, for the European Union, definitely, but I believe it's also a turning point for the transatlantic relations. While during the times of the Cold War, after 1945, actually the United States was a European power, part and parcel of the defense, of the economic development. Just think of the Marshall Plan. And after the end of the Cold War, it sort of, the relations were somehow loosened on both ends, so to speak. Pivot to Asia, the challenge, the emerging challenge of China, were of course much more important for Washington than relations with Europe or the European Union, because they were quite good. Yeah, and it was also in the interest of the Europeans, European Union, to see to it that we kind of exit this traditional asymmetrical relationship between the United States and Europe. And I think to a large degree, when it comes to trade, economic issues and so on, that has already worked. It did not work, obviously, in the defense, and NATO now has become ever more important in the defense of Europe, and we are now in a probably longer term exercise to deal with how to be more coherent, how to sing from the same hymn sheet when it comes to the aggression of Russia against Ukraine. which clearly is also has also to be seen in the wider context of two systems of value that are confronted now with each other. I would actually like to pose a question to Mr. Karas in regard to his keynote, where he has mentioned several of the issues that the European Union is facing. And I think this is a very important point to say, actually, the real big issues are global issues. So therefore, relations with the United States are crucial for Europe, but also beyond the United States. Now, Othmar, you have been involved. You were actually the mastermind behind the Austrian part of the European Union exercise on the future of Europe. And I would like to ask you whether you could explain to the audience a bit more about this reform exercise, which was a very comprehensive one, which was conducted in each and every of the member states of the European Union, but particularly in Austria. Maybe that might be of interest because it kind of mirrors many of the issues that are clearly also of relevance in the other member states.
Okay, thank you. To your introductional remarks on the beginning, I think on the one hand, in the center of the relation between the United States and Europe is at the moment the aggression war of Russia against Ukraine. Here we are on the same line to support Ukraine on the one hand and to decide sanctions against Russia on the other hand. And the second point is the new geopolitical situation. One reason is the war, but the global challenges I underlined in the beginning is also on the table: climate change, competitiveness, digitalization, and so on. And the fight between the systems, between democracies and the authoritarian systems in the world. And we can see it in the decisions on the General Assembly of the United Nations. We as defender of the liberal democracy are not in a majority. We are sometimes in a minority. So the conflict between systems is a geopolitical issue. And there is no way back to the time before the 24th of February 2022. And the third point is we have to learn in the United States, but especially in the European Union, the lessons from the crisis. And that is a lot. We started this conference on the future of Europe before the war started, the Russian aggression started against Ukraine. Why? The European Union is not ready. The European Union is a political project, and it's not ready. We have to develop it permanently. The European Union as a political project is a permanent answer to the crisis. And we learned from the crisis, we are less united in security policy, in defense policy, in research policy, in social policy, and in a common foreign affairs policy, and also in health policy, and so on. And the result of the Conference of the Future of Europe has many aspects. One is the democratic issue. So the members of the conference decided we will withdraw the unlimited majority in the Council of the Member States, to make the European Union more democratic. But we need an unlimited majority to can start a so-called convention to change the treaty. And in the Council, many member states are blocking that. On the other hand, we are asking for an own European election system and European lists and not only national lists. This intervention from the majority of the citizens and the members of the Conference of the Future of Europe is blocking by some member states. And on the third point, we have to develop the political will in the European Union to go ahead, to have the political will to find a cooperation, to work better together. This is the only one point to can solve the problems we have, because nationalism is not the answer to a global issue. But we have at the moment, I think, the same situation we have in the United States. We have many people, I think 40% in the United States, sure, the Republicans, are more nationalistic. And we have other, at the same level of Poles and citizens who are going to more cooperation, to more openness, to more global solutions. And that is the fight we have in Europe and also in the United States and worldwide. But the difference between the United States and the European Union is the United States is a state. In the European Union are 27 different member states. And we have to look to bring these 27 member states together that the European Union can be the speaker in the world. And that is the process we have at the moment. I hope we can go a step forward before the European election next year. Now I can say without treaty change, not everything is possible, but we don't need for all challenges a treaty change. We are now much more powerful after the financial crisis. We are now much more powerful after the pandemic. We are now more with the Green Deal, much more powerful in our common answer to the climate change. In the defense and security policy and in the foreign affairs policy, we are more powerful than in the past, but not on an optimum way with the so-called strategic compass. The strategic compass is a common working program for a common European defense policy in cooperating with the armies on national level to can act together when it is necessary. That is the process. All the issues that are on the table are also a part of the results of the Conference of the Future of Europe. So I can say in my last sentence, we know what we have to do. The main question in the United States and in the European Union is it possible to have a democratic majority and a public support to do what we have to do? And that is the conflict between parties, between member states, inside the European Union, and also between the different candidates for the presidential elections next year in the United States.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vice President
Thank you so
Karas.
much.
If I may have a follow-up question on this. So you mentioned in your introductory words that when it comes to security matters, we cannot always rely on the United States. And the Russian invasion in Ukraine has, of course, once again shown how important the US military support is for Europe. I think we all agree that Ukraine would not have been able to resist without US military support. That's the reality. Now, this support, as you know, comes in the context of NATO, but NATO also poses challenges, right? I'm thinking, for instance, on the fact that Sweden would like to become a member of NATO, Turkey is blocking this. And that brings us again to your idea that indeed there's an importance here for Europe to to elaborate on this idea of a European defense force that, as you said, should be complementary to NATO. And I wanted to ask you if you could expand a little bit on this. How do you envision this complementary character? What would be the role of the United States in a European defense force?
So I am in a special role because I am an Austrian, but I will give you an answer firstly as an European. It is a fact that 23 member states of the European Union are members of NATO. So it is but I mentioned it, we have a majority in NATO of member states inside the European Union. But on the other hand, we have a majority of effectiveness and money only from the United States and the United Kingdom. That is a gap. And I understand the US that they say, we are willing to help to do our job, but you have also to do your job inside the European Union. So for an Austrian, it is easier to be part in a common strategic European defense policy as to start a debate about NATO and neutrality. But for me, it's clear the standards, the equipment, the research, the education of the soldiers, that must be on the same level. Only these hard facts are equal. Then we can cooperate. We need a strong European defense policy with the members in NATO, and we need a strong cooperation agreement between NATO and the European defense policy to can act outside the European Union together. So for me, it's not a contradiction, but I think the European defense policy is a working program to do our job and not to wait to the US and to be an equal partner as European Union to the NATO and to have a strong link with the 23 member states who are members of NATO. I am not so sure that Turkey is blocking. You are right in the public debate, but I think the new statement of Sweden to accept that to analyze that the PKK is working in Sweden is I think is a good signal for Turkey that they are right. And I think after the election in Turkey, Sweden and Finland can become member of NATO. The process is going on, and the new statement of the president of Hungary is also a good signal that the cooperation is stronger than the blocking will.
May I perhaps come in with a question, dear Vice President Karas? Now, you've been touching very, very strongly the military defense issue. Now, if we look at the UK has always tried to maintain a privileged partnership with the United States and also claimed to do so over the past few decades. Now, how do you think the Brexit may have affected this partnership? They are out of your opinion.
I understand your question. That was one of the political issues of the Brexiteers. They said they don't need a membership in the European Union. if they are not member in the European Union, they can develop the transatlantic partnership between the United Kingdom and the United States. But for me, the Brexit is a vivid example of irresponsible politicians deliberately misleading people. Brexit did not solve a single problem, and not a single promise by the Brexiteers was implemented. Also, the promise of a new trade deal between the UK and the US has not happened. The United Kingdom now is not so strong not a so strong partner for the United States, because one of the benefits of a good relation with the United Kingdom was the membership of the United Kingdom in the European Union, because as member, the United Kingdom was part of the single market. Now the United Kingdom is not part of the single market. The United Kingdom is not a door opener for the US via the United Kingdom to the European Union. The United Kingdom is important for the defense policy cooperation, and in NATO, and the United Kingdom play a very efficient and important role in our cooperation against Russia and to defend the Ukrainians. But the United Kingdom is weaker than before. And that is why I think that it is not so easy to find new partners. And I was sometimes in the United States, and the message I got was always that the United States were always asking or pushing the United Kingdom, especially President Biden, to be part of the European Union. The US were against the Brexit. The Brexit has harmed the United Kingdom and its citizens and weakness the European Union. Therefore, it is also no positive consequences to the transatlantic partnership. Brexit has shown the severe consequences of irresponsible politics, and it has shown weaknesses in the European Union decision-making process, the EU's ability to act, and in the presentation of the added value of European Union membership. By implementing the results of the Conference of the Future of Europe, we can address this weakness. And we had a success in the last days because there is a new North Ireland agreement between the United Kingdom and the European Union, because the European Union always underlined, and to the citizens in Northern Ireland, we are the supporter and the defender of the Friday Agreement. And now, and in the time of Boris Johnson, he attacked this Friday Agreement. Now we are on a better way to have a common agreement with the new Prime Minister and the European Union. So there is a big development also to have a better dialogue between the EU and the United Kingdom.
Maybe we go to Wolfgang for a follow-up question, Wolfgang.
Well, actually, I wanted to broaden the topics actually, and ask Mr. Karas regarding his latest book, which is on migration. And migration is arguably the biggest issue, apart from the war, of course, in the European Union. It influences politics, domestic politics, as well as European Union politics to a very large degree. And Mr. Karas has written a book about it with a very important researcher in a young professor in Austria. And I think it would be good if you could, Othmar, explain to the audience what the migration issue actually is all about.
Thank you for these questions. But I remember the debate also in the United States in the Trump time. What Trump was saying about the border to Mexico and others is the same what the extreme right and the populists are doing in Europe. So I think we have the same political debate and the same confrontation in our society between black and white, good or bad. The substance of my book is we need, that is also in addition to that what I said before, we need a common European solution, not only national solutions. Because the solution in one member state can be the weakness of the neighbor country. For me, it is important to have a common European asylum and migration system. We have four headlines. The first is a common border management, organized, implemented, controlled, and financed by the European Union. A common border management must have a legal way for refugees, a legal way. In this case, I have to explain, to underline also, I think we have to split or differentiate the refugee issue from the migration issue. I know all refugees are migrants, but not all migrants are refugees. So we have to differentiate between refugees and migrants. Why? That are two different legal basic. The refugees have the right for an asylum process and the legal basis, the Geneva Refugee Agreement and the Human Rights Declaration from the United Nations to the European Charter of Fundamental Rights. When we are differentiated, we have to register and to differentiate it on the outside border with legal ways. The second point is we need an inside solidarity mechanism for the refugees and for the migrants. We have in Europe a big demographic problem. So we need workers in hospitals, in the social services, and also in the gastronomy, and so on. We don't have enough people inside Europe to do this job. So we need a legal working migration program inside the European Union, and we need common standards and a common procedure and a solidarity mechanisms inside the European Union. And outside the European Union, we have together, the United States and all member states of the members of the United Nations, we need a stronger investment in the countries where the refugees are coming from. We will have in the future more refugees than now. The Ukraine and the war of Russia against Ukraine created the biggest refugee number of refugees in the European Union since 1945. We have around till 8 million refugees in my home country, 90,000, and we have a new earthquake in Turkey and in Syria. In Turkey and in Syria, we have more million of people without home, and so that can be the next refugee numbers and refugee issue inside the European Union. So that is the substance of the book. Experience with the migration and asylum problems we had achieved or we had, and on the other hand, how we can work on these different levels together to solve this problem.
Thank you so much, Vice President. You mentioned populism, and I think you agree with me that there's several factors that can strengthen populism, uncontrolled migration being one. But if you allow me, I would like to bring up another such factor, which is political scandals. And we've heard here in the United States some concerning news about the EU Parliament, namely that a couple of months ago, the EU Parliament was confronted with a corruption scandal, the so-called Qatar Gate, where members of Parliament were provided favors by Qatar in exchange for influence at the Parliament. It affected some very prominent members of Parliament, such as Eva Kaili. As you can understand, this came as quite a shock to us here in the United States, and there's still many questions about what actually happened. And just wanted to ask you if you could share with us what is the stage of the investigations and what measures are being taken to prevent a repetition in the future.
Corruption. Each corruption scandal make the trust in our political system and in our liberal democracy weaker. And so we all, on all political levels, we have to fight against corruption. Corruption and democracy, liberal democracy and parliamentarism is a two parts, is a contradiction. And you are totally right. We are very worried, and it was totally new for us. But I have to say very clear, the European Parliament has 705 members, and we have one present member, and two former members who are part of this scandal, and some assistants of the members and assistants of political groups. And that is my interest as first Vice President of the Parliament, to make clear we are doing all what we can to support the justice in the different member states, to react on the political responsibility side of the Parliament and the political groups. But that is not the Parliament. The European Parliament is the most transparent parliament in Europe. We are developing our rules, but at the moment, I cannot see a rule who can act directly against the will of individuals to be corrupt. And we are working on a stronger transparency register. We are working on on different regulations for members and staff members and so on. But I cannot say at the moment what we have to do on the end, because the process is working and it's not finished. But the fight against corruption must be a top priority for all liberal democracies in the world, and is a top priority of the European Union in Ukraine. It's a big priority in our member states, and is a big priority in our candidate countries, because democracy and corruption are in a contradiction to another, but I can say very clear that is not the reality in the European Parliament, and we will do what we have to do, and we react on a way where nobody can say we are blocking, we are open, we are supporting all institutions to make the problems public and to find the right answers.
May I come in perhaps with comments and questions from the digital audience? And I've received a number of them meanwhile. And the one, let me start with a comment by Christine Opitz-Blörer. She is a member of the city government of Innsbruck. She was a former mayor of Innsbruck. And she would like to especially thank you, Vice President Karas, for, on the one hand, struggling for good solutions for the people in Europe, and on the other hand, keeping an eye on the countries also outside the European Union, which should definitely appreciate it, she sends me. And as you've been stating, Vice President Karas, we as Europe do not have a majority in the international community, and therefore we have to stand together and stand up for our values convincingly and passionately. And now the question which I've been receiving, or one of the questions, comes from Professor Markus Frischut. He holds the Jean Monnet chair here at the MCI, or in Innsbruck at the MCI, as I'm presently in Berkeley. And he says, thanks to Othmar Karas for these valuable insights, and greetings from Innsbruck. But as mentioned by you, quite some reforms can be done and have already been done without a treaty change within the European Union. Nonetheless, do you, Vice President Karas, think a treaty change in the European Union is politically realistic?
I am a politician. For me, everything what is necessary is realistic. It's a question of political will. It's a question of a strong political public debate. I think we have to politicize our political debate. We have to look for the substance, and not only for we have not to follow a black and white strategy. That is the real problem. The politicians in this time are not willing, or less politicians have the political will to discuss the substance and the issues. For me, politicians at the moment are more populistic than responsible for our future, so we have to discuss the substance. And I said, we need the unlimited majority, but the unlimited majority can overcome by the political will. The unlimited majority is a problem when it is an instrument to block. It is not a problem if we have the political will to find common solutions. From the beginning of the European Union, 1957 or the Schuman Declaration 1950 to 2015, it was always the case that the crisis the crisis brought the member states together to solve the problems. From 2015 on, there was a new process with some member states to go in an authoritarian system to split the European issue from the national issue and to fight with nationalism and populism for the next elections and against the European Union. We have a so-called, that is a technical issue, a so-called passerelle clause in the Lisbon Treaty. We don't need for all these things a treaty change. The passerelle clause gives the member states the possibility to change in the daily work the decision-making process without a treaty change. At the moment, is a treaty change not realistic, but my experience is in my dialogue with the citizens, if I discuss with the citizens the concrete issues and the concrete problems we have with the unlimited majority, they say, please do it. Solve the problems, taxation issue, security issue, environmental issues, and pandemic issue. And that is the reason, if we have a political debate about the substance, we will have a majority.
Excellent. Maybe we go back to Wolfgang for a follow-up question, Wolfgang.
Well, let me again change the topic and ask a question. Othmar, you have mentioned the Washington's Inflation Reduction Plan, which is a clear America First protectionist move. Now, we know that the European Commission is preparing, in the process of preparing, so to speak, a response, an answer to this. What is your position on this? It's obviously that that this is a rather tricky issue when it comes to trade relations, particularly with the United States, which is such an important trading partner. And what is the Parliament's position on this? Has there been at all a discussion already, or is this only starting?
Yeah, also the act of the United States is a permanent issue in the Parliament and in the Council and in the Commission. For us, a good friendship between the United States and the European Union we have to discuss what is the consequence of this act for the European Union. And then this is one point. We have to solve this problem about the concrete consequences for the European companies who are working in the United States and who are exporting their products to the United States. We need these points on a paper, and we have to discuss it. That is one point. The other point is the Commission tabled a so-called industry strategy, and this industry strategy is to developing, to support innovation and innovation projects inside the European Union, more than in the past. That is one reaction. And we are that the so-called subvention rules of the European Union are now more flexible, that the member states can react with concrete subventions for companies together with the Green Deal and investments to our common Green Deal products and developments and research products. For me, the third point must be to strengthen or finalize the single market. For me, the real answer must be to strengthen the single market, because the single market inside the European Union is not ready. We have no single. We don't have an energy union. We have a big problem with a European infrastructure, traffic infrastructure, energy infrastructure, and so on. We have a problem in a common. We are not good enough for a common research policy in the European Union. Also, we have to develop the single market to make the single market stronger. We have to cooperate with the United States. We have to strengthen the single market. We must make the subvention rules more flexible. And we have to support also finance our companies and our institutions who are doing the right things to solve our problems. Must be our reaction.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vice Chancellor. I look at the clock and I see that it's almost time, but if you perhaps have 1 or 2 more minutes for us, I would love to ask you a very quick, more a cultural question. It's an ongoing debate here in the United States on what it means to be American, what we share as a nation. And as you know, in the European Union, this is an even more challenging question with 27 member states, with different languages, different cultures. So I just would love to hear, in your personal opinion, what is it that unites all the citizens of the European Union? What would you define as the core characteristic of a European identity?
The core European identity is peace, liberal democracy, rule of laws, common values, the 4 freedoms, the euro, the single market, and for young people to can work in all member states. All exams have the right in all member states, and we are all citizens of Europe and citizens of our member states. We have more together as things who divide us.
Thank you very much. Andreas, I'll give it to you for the final question, I think, for today's session.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vice President Karas. I actually would have a number of questions, but I give preference to students. And there is a student named Jonathan Galvin. I think he is a University of California, Berkeley student, at least what his address says. And he asked, what advice would you give to young students after this discussion?
That's not so easy, but learn about our common foundation of liberal democracy and values, our history, political system and culture, which is essential for acting together. have the will to understand another better, to learn from another, to travel, to come together, be always open and participate in student exchanges and build relationship with people from different backgrounds and cultures. And on the other hand, I think use all possibilities your university give you to share programs with other universities and to be part of research projects from about different cultures, religions, states, and nations. That is the biggest benefit you can have for your own future.
Thank you so much. Sharon, do you want to close the session?
I want to close the session just by thanking all of you in the audience, and thanking, of course, you, Andreas, for the wonderful cooperation between our institute and the MCI Innsbruck. Wanted to thank Ambassador Petric for joining us for today's conversation and for the support we have been receiving from the Austrian Marshall Foundation that we're so grateful for. But of course, my biggest thank you goes for today's speaker, Vice President Karas, for making the time, being with us here today, answering difficult questions. But we're very grateful that you took the time, and very grateful also for your support for the transatlantic relations. Thank you so much.
Sure. See you. Good luck.
Thank you.
All the
Thank you.
best. Thanks again.
Thank you for the possibility.
Thank you so much.